I'm going to be entirely honest. I am feeling a bunch of different emotions and I don't know how to properly process them, but making content has always been a way that I process things, so let's give this a shot. If you haven't heard, Benny Potter, aka Comicstorian, passed away a few days ago due to an accident, and this has been a big blow for the comic book YouTube community. He's the biggest channel out there. Was the biggest channel out there, and I have been doing this for over a decade at this point, and I have known Benny throughout his entire career. We came up around the exact same time, and we've known each other every step of the way. I met Benny when he was at about 20,000 subscribers. Guardians of the Galaxy was about to come out, and I was still pretty new to the comic book hobby, and I was watching videos to learn more about this obscure comic book team. And Benny at the time had this series called Know Your Universe, and he would talk about all the various characters, and I ate them up. Now, at that time, I didn't have this channel. I didn't have Comic Drake. I was still new to reading comic books, and I didn't think that I was an authority that would be ready to make that kind of content yet. I was working at Game Theory. I had my channel Trailer Drake. I was making gaming content. And at that time, I commented on literally every single video that I watched because I wanted to give support and encourage every creator that I watched. And Benny noticed that I watched through all of his Guardians of the Galaxy week, and I left comment after comment after comment, and he said, "Hey, thank you so much for watching it. I'm actually a huge fan of yours." And you know, that's always fun whenever you meet a creator that you're enjoying who is also a fan of your work. And we quickly started talking. You know, he was a small up-and-coming channel, which is wild to say in retrospect. And he turned to me for, I don't know if it was necessarily advice, but he wanted to know about the whole YouTube thing. I had been doing this for a good while at that point. I worked at Screw Attack. I worked at Game Theory. I had a bigger channel than him at the time, and he was curious to pick my brain. And I told him, you know, I was interested in making comic book content. He was actually really encouraging for me to make Comic Drake. I started doing comic book videos on my gaming channel, and then I ended up spinning that out into this own thing, partly because Benny suggested it. He started this thing called the Weekly Pull, where he and Comics Explained and Comic Pop, then known as TV Little House, this is how old that was, they had a podcast and they invited me on, and I was a recurring guest on it. And sure, maybe we didn't all collaborate outside of the Weekly Pull podcast, but there was such an infectious collaborative energy of all of us being excited to make comic book content. We were asking each other what tags worked, what subject matter worked, what were we seeing success on, and how can we help each other get bigger. But of course, Benny ended up becoming the biggest and best of us, to the point where he far eclipsed me, but he needed to expand out the business. And he actually shot off the idea of, what if I got involved somehow as like a type of manager? After all, I have experience working at Screw Attack and Game Theory. I have connections. I've worked with brands. Maybe I can help arrange brand deals for the channel. Maybe I can move out to Colorado where his team is based and help out directly on the channel. Now, granted, anybody that knew Benny can tell you that he was always shooting off a million ideas a second like a machine gun, and you never really know which ideas actually have legs, and he's kind of has like a scattershot approach, but he was definitely an idea man, and I really considered it. I ended up going to Colorado, met him, met his wife. He showed me the studio. It was a fun time. He even came down here to Texas, and I arranged a meet and greet at a local comic book shop. And we ended up going to Medieval Times afterwards. It was me, Benny, and Rob. We went to Six Flags. It was an absolute blast. I got to see Benny at some comic conventions and really get to know him. He had a huge personality. He was loud. You could definitely hear him from across the room, but he did everything, at least what I knew when I was around him. He did everything in extremes. He was very energetic all the time. And that's kind of where we had our first little bit of incompatibility. I'm definitely a bit more introverted. Benny is was the epitome of a golden retriever, just high energy all the time, and I didn't exactly know how to process that. He was also like a decade my senior. I was still a young adult, new to this whole world, and in a lot of ways, I didn't really feel like I belonged, that we entirely vibed, and that was okay. I still had a lot of respect for him, and also he was just the kindest person on a regular basis. Sure, he was very high energy and chaotic good with his kindness, but he was kind nonetheless. And I have nothing but respect for that. He's always been just a good, passionate, and loving guy. And even if we didn't exactly meet eye to eye on just interpersonal dynamics, it doesn't mean I had any less respect for him. But yeah, as the complete stories were taking off, the Know Your Universe stuff went away. And that's what I subscribed to Comicstorian for, and it wasn't there anymore. And unfortunately, yeah, I unsubscribed. And he got busy with everything. He was doing the Eligible Monster gaming stuff plus Comicstorian. Then he was dabbling with manga videos too. Just, he had his entire life. I totally understand that our relationship kind of went onto the wayside, especially because we didn't live in the same area. But we never really got back onto that rhythm that we had whenever we first met. It also doesn't help that as I went through my 20s, I went through a lot of changes in my personal life, and my entire everything changed a lot. I became a lot more fat-headed and stubborn and abrasive and just a whole lot of cringe. That quote-unquote new Drake is not everybody's cup of tea. That new Drake is not my cup of tea. You think I am obnoxious and difficult to deal with now? I was so much worse back then. I really kind of got the feeling that Benny wasn't a fan of my pretentiousness, which I totally understand. Again, I am cringing at how insufferable I used to be. And that kind of subsided when I invited him to be a part of At Home Comic Con, an event that we put together during the pandemic, where a bunch of comic book creators, we got together and put on a full streamed convention raising money for charity. And when I was setting up Benny and the Comicstorian team for their panel, he asked, "Hey, by the way, I wanted to ask you, Drake, what's in that mug that you're always holding?" And that kind of took me back a little bit, because my new format with the green screen and the mug, that was still decently new. But Benny saying that I always have the mug heavily implies that he watched more than one video. I didn't know that he was still watching my content. Like, for him to know that the mug was a recurring motif, it's not like he just stumbled across one video one day. No, he was watching the show. Admittedly, I didn't do much of a follow-up on that, but that gave me hope that maybe we're okay. Maybe we can rekindle this relationship. And now that I'm older and more mature, maybe we could, have a better chance at friendship. And this year, I did Comics for the Cure. I assembled a whole bunch of comic book YouTube creators once again, and we did a big Fortnite live stream to raise money for the Cancer Research Institute. I invited Benny. I sent him like 5, 6, 7 emails, and I never heard back. So that got me thinking, like, oh, are we not good? And I wanted to change that. One of my goals for this year, after seeing that I was ghosted for a charity event, was I'm going to try and give this friendship another go. I'm going to try to put in the effort. But I've also seen a lot of sentiment from people on my side of comic book YouTube, the more video essay style, where people were being really critical on the channels that did dramatic readings. And I made a TikTok a couple weeks ago saying, hey, yeah, my content isn't meant to be a replacement for actually reading books yourself. But at the same time, I don't think that the criticism that channels like his got were entirely valid. Us video essayists need to be a little bit kinder too, because these videos absolutely have value. Before I read comics, I went on huge wiki binges, reading synopses for a bunch of various stories that I had never read. And channels like Comicstorian were giving that same kind of experience, but in video form. There is absolutely validity to the format. And Benny has definitely encouraged thousands of people to pick up their first comic. I really meant that to be an olive branch, to be the first step forward in rekindling things. I don't know if he saw that video. I don't know what he thought of me in the end. But this year was really, that was going to be one of my main goals. And it hurts now that I'm never going to actually get that opportunity. it's cliche, you know, I turned 30 last year, and it doesn't mean that I'm old, but you start to have a lot of reflection on what your life had been up to that point. Comic Drake is 10 years old now. It has been what I've been doing for my entire adult life, and I've been reflecting a lot on the people and the choices that I made. And legitimately, my friendship with Benny was something that I have been ruminating on all year. I feel like I could have been a better friend. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't even know if making this video is helpful. But Benny was one of the hardest working people I've ever met. I have met many large content creators, but Benny busted his ass harder than so many big creators that I met. He was always working. He cared about his audience and his craft so damn much. And I know that it was a real struggle because his views have been down over the past year. But also, I heard that he was starting a new initiative that he was really excited for. And it sucks that before it really got to get off the ground, he was gone. He was immensely successful, and I really hope that he took the time to enjoy that success. He was loved by so many people in this industry for a reason. Even if I didn't necessarily vibe with his big, bold personality, I've always thought he was kind. And at the end of the day, that's the best thing you can be. Life is short. You never know if you're going to be gone tomorrow. So treat every day as if it's a gift. It probably is.